Well, here we are. We're ready to start on a Monday night, June 22nd, 2020. I'm just going to wait for some people to sign in here. Hope everything is going well. Please make sure that you check in just by sending a quick hello that I'm here. How you doing? I hope you all came off a great weekend. I know that I came off of wasn't a stressful weekend per se as stress goes, but man, writing that document, man, it was, what was it called? It was called Hard Knocks, Sport Participation and Violence Reduction in Homestead and Florida City. Last week I wrote roughly 116 pages in 5 days, basically using a system that I've given to you on how to write a great paper on the YouTube videos. So please make sure you sign in real quick so I know who I'm talking to. And let me also say that since I fell a little bit behind, I mean, we're moving extremely quick. It's basically a 5-week class, and the 6th week is final exam. So as it turns out, it's very difficult to cover everything in such a short amount of time. And then of course, last week was one in which I really had to dig in and raised up to the challenge and tried to do the best I could do. So in doing the best I could do, I had to kind of step aside, but I'll be giving you announcements on Wednesday and Thursday, and grading on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You should have everything back in your possession come Sunday, and then next week we'll be wrapping up assignments and we'll start getting ready for that final exam. So who's out here, baby? Who's out here? Let's see who's going. Who's here? And by the way, I'm answering the questions. Oh my gosh, I mean, I'm sitting here, I only went through 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 5 pages, single-spaced questions from your class and your classmates, and many of them I still haven't even had a chance to read all the questions. I went through them. Right here, I think I have at least 125 questions to answer, which obviously I can't answer all those. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through. Hey, Stephanie, what's up? What's up? How are you? I saw your questions come in today, and I think they were sent earlier, but I just saw them today. And I don't even know if I have them on me. But you can text me, or you can put into the chat here. You can put in your questions if you want, and I'll be glad to answer them. But you've been terrific all semester, and everything is going to be fine with you. We know that for sure. I think you're also in the social problems class, if I'm not mistaken. I can't necessarily prove it, but I know that you've done extremely well, and I'm really happy to have you here. We will be doing, I started my 50-day challenge today. I know it's a week late, but writing that document last week, man, let me tell you what. I can do it, but it's hard to write 116 pages in a week. I think it's 117 pages. Had to edit it, do all that kind of stuff, and got it done. But it was definitely a challenge. So just look forward to the announcements later in the week, Wednesday and Thursday. Let me kind of recover from last week's very, very difficult week, and I'll make sure that I guide you all through the finish line. Good. I thought so. Your name, Stephanie, your name continues to show up on my radar, and everything you do is good. So I'm really happy that you're here. I think that the way I'm going to start is I'm just going to simply, one of the questions that keeps coming up all the time, and I need to get this haircut, don't I? One of the things that continue, and Stephanie, if you have a specific question, by the way, that you would like for me to answer, because you've been very participatory in both classes, please just go ahead and throw it up there, and I'll start off with you. I don't even know who the other person is right offhand who's watching with us. But in any case, I'll just simply talk about the process of writing this book a little bit, because the process will certainly lead into the stories. Now, the one thing that I found tremendously interesting is that in the face of these ongoing protests, and in the face of police, hey Yolanda, in the face of, I'm sorry for getting an error message. Just let me know if you can hear me. It's okay if you're getting an error message. Let me know if you can hear me, and that's fine. Hopefully you can see me, but maybe that's not maybe that's not the best thing for everybody. But in any case, Mac Mix. Oh, Megan. Hey, Megan, you were there earlier today. So given that, I'm going to try to answer different questions. As a matter of fact, Megan, since you were in class earlier today, if you want to throw up a starting point for me, I'll go ahead and start by answering your question first, because as you all know, or maybe you don't know, when people ask me a question in class, I can basically take one simple question and speak for roughly an hour and a half on that one question, because the way my brain works is I go from here to here to here, all the way to circle back over to here. So Stephanie and Megan, please feel free. Yolanda too, please throw out a question. But I'll go ahead and start off. The most common question that I've been asked repeatedly. Well, tell your boyfriend thanks. He can watch too if he wants, because it's not like the typical class where I'm going to just hit you over the head with chronic offenders, multi-ethnicity, and come in with these engagement theories, entrance theories, voluntary organization, involuntary organization, all that kind of stuff. Well, thank you, Megan. I appreciate that. It's funny that you mentioned how strong I may be and everything that I've overcome. But when you're working inside this brain, I don't find myself to be too strong at all. It's kind of weird is that, I've always had this problem of not seeing myself the way other people see me. For example, on Saturday, I went to a great high school. There's no way to put it. I went to a great high school. I didn't know it at the time because I'm so busy dealing with what's going on at home and in the neighborhood and trying to navigate threat and all that kind of stuff. All right. I'll tell him thank you. So, I was always concerned with my physical safety and, preventing myself from being a victim of sexual assault, which is always omnipotent, all those kind of things. So when I went to high school, or when I went to school, period, I was surrounded by geniuses. I don't know what the entrance standards were, because I know when I took the exam to enter into Maumee Valley in kindergarten, I scored, I think it was a 104 IQ, which is a little bit below average. I think average is 110, 112 or something like that. But what Mrs. Coffin was her name, she interviewed me, and Mrs. Coffin told my mother that, hey, he can really talk. He interviews really well. He's not afraid to talk, is he? And she's like, no, he's not afraid to talk. But I scored low as far as the entrance exam. So I came in with a 104, but when I left with a 159 IQ, which what does that mean? That's a very good IQ to leave with, but if IQ is embedded in what our knowledge is or what our brain structure is, then I should have left with a 104, but I left with a 159. So how do you raise your IQ by 55 points? Well, if it's biological or it's psychological, it should only go up a few points, correct? So if it's something that is innate in our nature, then my IQ should have been roughly, plus or minus 2 or 3% of where I started. But for it to jump up like that is really a reflection of the fact that I learned a language system. So I think IQ really is a reflection of the language system that we use, more so than the natural propensity of our brain. So based upon that, I tend to think that everybody, oh my gosh, I'm reading all this motivational stuff, everybody has greatness in them. So the question is can we match the language to our greatness? And when we learn how to do that, then great things happen. And that's kind of the way that I look at it. So as far as being strong, I just feel like I made a lot of friends. I practiced ad nauseum sports. And I'm looking older and the light's not so great and all this kind of stuff. But when I was really, really young, I used to practice sports. Mama Green had me practicing sports all the time. And what I would do is, I didn't know that these skills were going to be so important. But what she would do is she'd have me stand about 10 feet away from a wall. It was an erratic wall and the grass was erratic. And she gave me an old baseball glove from my brother Guy, Leo, her son. And it was all beat up, shoestrings tying the web together. And I had to throw the ball up against the wall, and I didn't know where it was going to bounce. But she made me field it 100 times in a row without an error, pretend to throw it to first base. And if I dropped a ball or made an error, I had to start all over again, all the way back to 1. Then once I got to 100, my next task was to throw a stone up in the air and to hit it with a broomstick and hit it out into the field 10 times in a row. And what I didn't know at the time was she wasn't teaching me how to be a great athlete. She was really teaching me the ability to sit down and be patient, right, and to be dedicated and to be driven in a way that most other people wouldn't. I mean, how many people are going to sit there at the age 5, 6, 7 years old and play baseball by themselves up against the wall for anywhere from 6 to 10 hours a day without getting anything to drink, without getting anything to eat? And it just so happens that what it did was it gave me great eye-hand coordination, I could hit, and I was just a tiny little kid. I mean, I was 4'8" when I graduated 8th grade, but I could hit anything, and I could field anything. When it came to basketball, I could just play. And I practiced basketball the same way all day, every day. And when I was in the house, I'd practice dunking it on my Nerf hoop. I mean, I had all kinds of form and stuff like that. So for me, instead of being strong, what I was able to do was really use my athletic prowess, because me and this kid named Booney, we were the only 8-year-olds that really were allowed to play at the high schoolers who were 16, 17, 18 years old up at our playground. And the reason they let us, because I asked them a few years ago, there's a guy named Squeak, and it's a street gang, but it's not a street gang, right? We didn't call ourselves Hathaway Street, but we certainly were. We had all the qualities of a gang. What would they call it? A hedonistic gang back in that time. It wasn't a corporate gang, and it wasn't an instrumental gang like you see in Crips and Bloods in the movies, but it certainly laid the foundation, because our neighborhood, after I had moved out of the neighborhood when I was about 16 years old, the neighborhood about 2 years later became a Crip neighborhood. As a matter of fact, my house became a Crip house, and then the neighborhood we moved to became a Villains neighborhood, which was a Blood set. So the Bloods were in the neighborhood about 6 blocks away, which I moved to, and then the neighborhood I left behind was Crips. So we actually laid the foundation. So for me to be able to participate with these high schoolers, me and Booney had to be very good. And we asked him, I said, Squeak, did you let us play because we were good, or just because you liked us? He said, man, we liked you guys, but there is no way in the world we were going to let you play with us unless you could play. So what Mama Green had done was that she gave me an avenue to fit in, right? I never felt strong, but athletically I knew I could fit in. So the fact that I could play sports really well, and it ended up, Booney and I, we won, when we were 12 years old, we won the city championship. We're actually one of the teams in the United States that was predicted to go to that Little League World Series that you see in Williamstown every year in Pennsylvania. We were actually predicted to go to that because our team was nasty, right? I was second baseman, I was captain, Booney was pitcher and captain, and our team was loaded. We had Billy Mills. Oh man, we had talent at every position, and I could just run off Mike McDougal, Danny Wayne. Like, you guys know who I'm talking about. You don't know anything I'm talking about, so I'll just leave it at that. But what allowed me to fit in was sports. And the other thing that allowed me to fit in is, back in those days especially, I was a really funny dude. I mean, if I showed up, people are going to be laughing, they're going to be rolling. I go to school, I can make them laugh. I'm at the neighborhood, I can make them laugh. In the house, I can make them laugh. I was really funny. And if you're ever in a live class, you might even see that I might be able to make you laugh. But it's hard in this little situation. But I was funny. So what might have been strength was really adaptability, right? So I was able to adapt to these situations, but because I went to this great school, my IQ went up. And when my IQ went up, what it allowed me to do was not get internships, but it allowed me to fit in so that I could get into a great college. And over time, the accumulation of being able to fit in and the accumulation of being able to hold my own intellectually, I got to a point where I had to overcome a lot of learning boundaries, because, like I said, I was surrounded by a guy named Sexum, and Sexum, what I was saying was I spoke on Zoom on Saturday night with 3 guys I went to high school with, and they were amazing. They were all brilliant beyond belief, and they all went to Ivy League schools. Eric, my best friend, well, they're all my best friends. Eric went to Columbia, which is in New York City. Pradik, guy's on a whole nother chart, man. This guy, he went to Yale. He was valedictorian at Yale, and then he went to Harvard Medical School, and at Harvard Medical School he was also valedictorian. Sexum, who was our salutatorian, who is now the vice president of Twitter, he went to Williams College. So these 3 cats had gone to these Ivy League schools, and here I am, right? And I'm sitting here saying, I just don't believe it. I don't belong with this group. So in any case, because I was always surrounded by brilliance, because I was always surrounded by these teachers, over time what happened was I started mimicking and picking up the language system. So what may have looked like strength and what may have looked like the ability to overcome really was the fact that I was given a lot of gifts. My mother and I were broke all the time because of the fact that I went to this elite private school. And of course it caused me problems when I went home because in the neighborhood, I mean, I had to prove myself. I was always being taunted. The school is called Maumee Valley Country Day School. And every time I'd get off the bus, I may have told you this before, I don't know, I'd talk so much. They called it Monkey Vomit Country Gay School. And then I get chased home, I get beat up, I get thrown up against the wall. Me and my neighbor Chris, one day he meets me at the bus stop. He's 5, I'm 8. The big guys, because I'm carrying my violin, and they throw us up against there's a bar called Chardy's. They throw us up against Chardy's. It's the middle of winter, and what they did was they took these ice balls, these snowballs, and they put rocks in the middle of the snowballs, and they lined us up against the wall, and they're just pelting us in the face. Bam, bam, bam. You know, when you get hit with an ice ball that has a rock in it, and it hits you right here, you're like, boom. So we're getting smoked. And ultimately, they let us go. But it ends up, you know, how to navigate that was as much smart as it was going to Maumee Valley. So I had to navigate this. It was more of a navigation than it was being strong. I just had the gift of being surrounded with some pretty incredible people. And some of the things that actually happened, and I don't remember what I told this particular class, were things I wouldn't wish upon my worst enemy, you know. The attempted sexual assaults, the sexual assaults, you know, the stuff that happened where, you know, I know I didn't tell you this one where I'm walking, it's about 15, I was 15 years old, I think, and there was a real pretty girl. She was a friend of mine. Her name was Suzette. I had a little crush on her, and she had a crush on me. Of course, I couldn't date anybody because Irma Jean wouldn't allow it. My mother's best friend who rented from us upstairs, she was always like, if you start dating and somebody gets pregnant, then all of your goals and ambitions are going to be destroyed. I don't want you to kiss anyone. I don't want you to date anyone. Just stay away from those girls. But if you come home gay, I'm going to kill you. So I couldn't date girls. I couldn't date boys because I was either going to be dead or excommunicated. So either way, it was a losing proposition for me. So it became a very restrictive type of avenue. But, you know, she was a pretty girl, and I had a little crush on her. And I knew she had to walk all the way to the other side of the east side, which was a good 5-10 mile walk. And so I said, well, why don't you come on, I'll walk you home. But let's not go the long way. Let's not go up to Navarre or Star. Let's go ahead and cut up over the Facet Street Bridge. But the Facet Street Bridge had been abandoned and closed down for some time. So I had my bike. It was a brand new bike. My other bike had got stolen. I had a 12-speed. It was a pure chrome, what do they call it? It was not a Schwinn. It was a Western Auto 12-speed chrome bike, and it was, my mom bought it for me, and I had my baseball mitt and I had my cleats, and they got stolen. I went to a pastor's house to get a drink of water after baseball practice, and while I'm in there talking to Becky Raisner, who also went to Maumee Valley, I get a drink of water, someone rolls off on my bike, they steal it, and I go home, and my mom, and this is one of those situations where I learned never to blame the victim for their own victimization. When I got home and told my mom that my bike had been stolen from a pastor's house adjoining the church from in front of their van that I had hidden, of course I got in a lot of trouble for it, and I had to go buy a new bike, which I bought a Schwinn. Back in those days, I used to collect Susan B. Anthony silver dollars, they were silver dollars, but they're only the size of a quarter, and they had Susan B. Anthony on them from 1979. And I had collected about 350 of them. So I went to Schwinn and bought a Schwinn Continental, and I counted it out, $250 in $1 bills, or $1 silver dollars, and I bought a baseball glove and new cleats, all with $1 bills, and which really hurt me because it took me years to save them. But in any case, I bought it. And so we're walking over this bridge, and as we're walking over this bridge, as we're coming over to Weiler Homes, and Weiler Homes at the time was annexed by the Detroit Boys, which was a street gang out of Detroit. And I knew some people in Weiler Homes, and it was rough. I mean, it was rough. It was rough. But I knew my next door neighbor's grandmother lived on the other side of the hill, and he had a neighbor named Willie Shoulders, who was the neighbor to his grandmother. So I knew he lived down there. He played for our enemy baseball team called Eastside Central, but he was center fielder, and he was really good. So we're walking. I said, come on, Suzette, let's go ahead and take the shortcut home because, you know, it's going to save us a half hour if we just cut over this bridge. Man, whew, let me tell you what. We're going over the bridge, and when I look over, I see about 8, 10 guys over there, and they're drinking and they're smoking weed and they're doing other stuff like speed. And they've got their nunchucks. They're doing all this Bruce Lee stuff, which was big back in the 70s. So they're doing all their nunchucks, and I see a couple guys with knives and stuff. I said, so maybe we should turn around and go back, and we'll go the long way because I don't really feel like walking through them. So we turn around to go back. And by the way, the bridge that we were standing on, the abandoned bridge, beneath there was the site where one of our friends, Cricket, had been decapitated. She had been mutilated. She had been raped, sodomized, and where they cut off the limbs. So she, what do you call it, disembodied. So she was found dead underneath the bridge where we're standing, and we're walking towards this gang. And it ended up the gang didn't do it. Street stories have it that someone else did it, who's no longer alive anyhow. So there's not much that can be done. But I said, let's turn around and go this way. And we turn around. Oh my God! And there's 8 guys behind us following us on the bridge. I'm like, oh, do we go straight or turn around? I said, well, if we turn around, it's going to look like we're scared. Then we're done. So I said, well, let's just keep walking straight and see what happens. So we're walking straight over this bridge, and as we come to the end of the bridge, I'll tell you what, I was so happy that I had stopped fighting about 3 years beforehand because it forced me to think more on my feet with my head than with my fist. I wasn't very good at it. I'll punch you, but you know, most of the time I'm going to lose. But I'm going to throw a couple in and see if I can connect. But I won't tell you that story. But I got into a fight one time, and this great big guy was going to pulverize me, and we're still friends. And his brother pulled him off of him. But anyhow, I'll get in. Maybe I'll talk about that story. That one's crazy, complicated. So anyhow, we're walking over, and I've already stopped fighting. I couldn't fight 10 guys anyhow. We got 8 in front, 8 behind, 16. We're dead. There's nothing I can do against a real street gang. So we get over to the other side of the bridge, and the guys stop us. 3 or 4 guys stop us. And the first guy goes, your girlfriend, she's really pretty. I said, yeah, she is pretty, isn't she? Thank you. And they go, I like your bike and this mitt. I said, you like it? I said, thanks. I just, you know, I had to replace one that got stolen here recently. He said, oh, you did, huh? He said, well, maybe I could go for a ride on it. And what about your girlfriend? You think she'd want to ride with me? I said, I don't know about that. And here comes the guy with the nunchucks, drinking, knives out. I said, so what are you doing over here anyhow? I said, well, my friend Willie lives right down the hill in that apartment right there. And I play second base for Eastside Central. I play for Navarre, but I'm going to lie. I said, I play second base for Eastside Central, and he's our center fielder. And I said, you know, we're just coming over to visit him, talk about our game next week. And they said, Willie Shoulders. I said, yeah, Willie. I said, he lives right there. And they said, you know Willie? I said, yeah, I know Willie. We're teammates. I play second, and he plays center field. They said, all right, guys, if he knows Willie, he must be okay. Let the guy through. And they said, okay. So they opened it like the gates open up. And I said, all right, so that just happened on the handlebars. Man, let me tell you what, I've never ridden a bike faster than that in my life because it was, I knew that if we didn't figure out a way of that situation, it was about to get ugly. I mean, it was, you know, I had a few incidents where I literally was afraid for my life. You know, the one where the guys over at the factory wanted to sodomize me, and just so happened the ice cream truck came, and I ran to the ice cream truck, smashed the dude that was really trying to, he had pock face, and they had been drinking and fishing down at the river, and his hair is all unkempt, and he's breathing in my face, and they're hitting me and trying to push my head down. I'm like, oh my God, leave me alone. The ice cream truck comes. I said, look, ice cream. I hit him in the face with the bag. I run to the ice cream truck, get away. They get away. I go get Mama Green. She gets in the car. She said, come on, baby, get my gun. I bring her purse with the gun in it, and she cocks it. We get out of the car. She goes looking for him, and, you know, they didn't find anybody. But they had found a dead body back in the woods back behind that factory. Young girl, same kind of situation as Cricket. And so we got this crazy scenario going. So I don't know, you know, I don't know if I was strong, Megan. I don't know if I really had the ability to overcome. But what I did have the ability to do was adapt. And I really did have the ability to listen to the guidance of Mama Green. And I think the combination of being scared, right, meant that although fighting was valued, you know, I did have to fight quite often. it was more valuable that I learned how to speak. And the thing that Maumee Valley did for me is Maumee Valley allowed me to learn the language of the upper middle class, so I can move up in terms of professionalization. But it also allowed me to maintain my street sense so that I can navigate in between two worlds. And the ability to navigate in between two worlds did something really special. And what it did for me is that, and friends, as they started meeting one another across these lines, they saw that when I was in my neighborhood, I acted the exact same way as I did when I was at my school. And when I was at my school, I acted the exact same way that I did when I was in my neighborhood. And as it turns out, that consistency in behavior really was the thing that buffered me from craziness, because that way I never was regarded as a snob by the people in the neighborhood. And at school, I was never regarded as the poor kid because I always fit in. So I fit in both ways. And one of the things that it's funny that, this is an ethnicity class and nobody asked me a question about ethnicity, which is interesting. But when I went to Denison, when I arrived, it was a very wealthy school for the most part, a lot of fraternities, a lot of sororities. About 2,000 kids located on top of a little mountain in Granville, Ohio, which is like the central part of the state. And when I arrived, I came out of high school and I had all this acne. You can't tell now. I mean, I'm okay for my age, but I had really bad acne. I won't tell you the stories because it's on videotape and I don't need, my supervisors watching this. But the acne was so bad that, I'd go to dance clubs or I'd go to a fraternity party and I'd be dancing with somebody or whatever. And the lights would come up, they'd see my face and people would run away. And if I asked somebody to go to a dance or, to a formal or a prom or something like that, prom I went to, but that doesn't count. But if I go to a formal, they would see the face and they'd say, "No, man, you're nice, but it's okay." And I came down to my grandfather lived in Delray, and Delray Beach down here in, South Florida. And that summer I went on some medicine called Accutane and erythromycin, and it took care of the acne. And then what I did was I went out to the sun, put Carmex on my face, cooked it. Then at night I put aloe on, cut an aloe plant from his yard and put the aloe on. So when I went back to Denison, it was all gone. And then all the fraternities wanted me to join the fraternity house because I was very social, I got along with everybody. And, the women liked to dance with me and we'd go to the frat houses and I knew everyone. And so now they're all saying, let's join. But here's what happened my freshman year, talk about race and ethnicity. So when I go to Denison, nobody knows my background. They don't know I was raised by Mama Green. They don't have any idea. But it was very interesting because there's 2,052 students there. And yes, exactly, Megan. So 2,052 students, 62 African Americans. In my freshman year, we were put in a dorm that had been a frat house on Fraternity Row that they had kicked off the year before because of some violence. So Delta Upsilon, I think they were called. They were removed from campus, and then they put us as freshmen on Frat Row, and the fraternity houses didn't like that in the first place. So in any case, I have two African American roommates. One is from Baltimore, Duke, and Duke was an inner city kid, man. The week before he shows up to school, he's held at gunpoint, and they use automatic weapons out in front of a cemetery, and they spray in front of the cemetery. He jumps over the wall and runs through the cemetery and gets away, never looks back, never checked to see if anyone else got hit, and he came from really rough, and he was a rough dude. He was a great dude, handsome dude, man. He was ripped. He looked like, he used to think of himself as Marky Mark, because back then he was a supermodel for his stomach, and Duke could make the quarter roll up and down his stomach with his muscles. He was incredible that way. So I got Duke, and then Tony from Piscataway, New Jersey. He's still one of my best friends, Tony D. I call him T-Bone, and he didn't go to Rutgers. He came to Denison, and as a matter of fact, he was one of my best friends. He still is. And one of the things that was interesting is I could sneak into frat houses because people liked me enough as far as my humor, but I couldn't join. But because of Tony and Duke, I was always welcome in the Black Student Union. And Duke had this friend, and his friend's name is Smooth. And Smooth was about 6'4", muscles on top of muscles. I mean, Smooth was just ripped up. He was a sophomore or junior at the time, and he was from Philadelphia, North Philadelphia, which is urban inner city area, and he was tough, but he was super quiet. He never spoke. And if he did speak, it really meant that he loved you big time. And this guy, he didn't know what to make of me. Every time I walked by him, I'd say, "What's up, tree?" I didn't even call him by his right name, and he'd just look at me. He's like, "Who is this guy?" And then there's a guy named Grover, and every time I see Grover, I say, "Grover." And I see him on that basketball court, I'm taking it to you, and he's looking at me. He's like 6'2", 6'3", and I'm just like 5'9", 5'10". I'm like, "I'm coming at you, Grover. You better be careful." And of course, I was the only one on our team that could really score at that time. So I'm averaging 23 a game, and our team is only averaging 27 or 30. But you know, it is what it is. But I got a reputation for that. But what happened is Smooth, because he had to adapt to a really difficult situation in North Philly. This isn't about Smooth, so I'm not going to go into his story. But Smooth came from inner city North Philly, where he's just like, dude, tough guy, real quiet, watches everything on the street level. And so I'd go into the cafeteria, and I'd sit down and eat. I was there at 4:30 when the thing opened, and I left at 6:30 when the thing closed, because I like to talk to everybody on the campus. It was my goal. As a matter of fact, when my acne went away, my goal was to know every single person, every 2,000 student, and all the teachers on that campus. That was my goal. I don't know why, but it was. I got to know most of them, about 1,500 of them. I could still call them by name. It was just kind of a freakish thing. But one day, we're walking underneath the cafeteria. Duke and Smooth are walking westward, and I'm walking eastward to go visit some friends at Shorney Hall or Smith Hall, whatever. You don't know. You don't care. And I'm walking, all of a sudden he goes, boom! He hits me in the stomach. I'm like, God dang it! And I'm down like this, stomach's all throbbing. I'm like, oh my God! I said, what's that for? He said, don't worry about it. So we get back to the dorm room later. I said, Duke, what's up? Why did he punch me in the stomach, man? He said, it's because he likes you. I'm like, what would he do if he didn't like me, man? Knock me out? He said, no. He did it because he's letting you know that he has respect for you, right? I'm like, really? And so the next day at the cafeteria, I said, Wayne. His name is Wayne. So Wayne, I didn't call him Smooth till later. So Wayne, why did you hit me in the stomach? He said, man, I've been watching you. I said, well, okay. And he said, I watch and see how you act when you're with your white friends, and I watch how you act in the BSU. I watch how you act in the classroom, and I watch how you act in the frat houses and on the basketball court. And he said, you know what? He said, the reason I like you, man, is because you're consistent. You act the same across all race lines. You act the same across all class lines. You act the same whether a person can play or if they can't play. He said, the fact that you're consistent is the thing that I like the most about you. And I'm like, consistency? He said, yeah, it's consistency, man. So I'm sitting here saying to myself, wow, that's pretty deep. And we ended up becoming best friends. And what was interesting was there was 11 of us that became a group called The Family. And we're all urban guys. Some of them had more money than they acted like, but it was still one of the best friends I had. We had Benny, Face, Smooth, Chris. We had Andre, Dre, Big Thunder. We had all these guys in this group, Pete, Peters, Puppy. I mean, it was a great group of friends. And what I started to learn was, and it was a carryover from what I had learned when I was young, is that, I don't remember if I told you about the pancake story, so I'm not going to repeat it. You can read about it in the book called Pancake Tolerance. But what I learned was, from Mama Green early on, was that if people love you and if people respect you, the color of their skin is irrelevant. Because there's going to be people with the color of your skin who are going to disrespect you and treat you with hatred. So it doesn't matter what the color of the skin is. What matters is do they treat you based upon your character? Do they treat you based upon your attributes? Do they understand that you have strengths and weaknesses? How do people treat you is what's key. And do I love you? I said, yeah. And she said, do you love me? I said, yeah. She said, so what does it matter what we look like? Does Daddy love you? Yeah. Do you love Daddy? Well, yeah. And so she said, does it matter what our skin looks like? I said, no. And she said, okay then. I said, but I don't like people with glasses. And she said, come on, baby. She said, what do you mean? She said, I wear glasses, Leo wears glasses, Guy wears glasses, Irma Jean wears glasses, your mom wears glasses. So you're telling me you don't like people with glasses? I said, yeah, I like people with glasses. Now, the reason why I was trying to hate is because it's socially constructed. Because I was starting to learn from the kids at my school that there are differences based upon race. Right? And there's differences based upon class. I was never treated differently myself, but that's because I played sports. I could take it to you. So because I was a sport because I was athletic, it oftentimes separated me away from social class position, right? So I had those gifts. So, when we take a look at it that way, Megan, I think I'm strong, okay? I think I'm not fearful of change and things coming at me. I feel like I can stand up to anything. I can rise up. I can get knocked to the ground, and I know every time I get knocked down, I'm going to stand back up again. That goes without saying. That's a given. But I don't see myself as strong because, there's some things that are really tough to deal with. So, for example, relationships, I'm great at them and I'm horrible at them because those things with Irma Jean play in my head. So I have to get over those obstacles, internal obstacles, and really see people for who they were. And remember, I grew up in a homophobic era, and an era in which women were objectified for commodified purposes. They break them down into body parts, they put them up on a billboard, they put them up in car ads, they put them on the TV as body parts instead of as a whole body. And what happens is you learn how to objectify the person as pieces instead of as a whole. And we were so, it was such a sexualized neighborhood that I won't even get into this, but any girl that came into the neighborhood became known. We'll just put it that way. They had a shed over at Johnny and Junior's house, the Godfather. He was the head of our little clique, you could say. They had a shed in the back, and there was a mattress on the shed. Now, one day he said, "Hey, Shawn, why don't you go out there and get our balls and bats and stuff and bring them over here?" I said, "Yeah, all right, man." Because I heard the legend what was going on over the shed, but I had never been in there. I opened that up. I saw that mattress on the ground. I'm like, "Oh, no, man. No, you got to be kidding me." So I knew what was going on. But so I grew up in that kind of era and had to really learn to reconstruct the way I saw, human sexuality, gender, sexual preference, and things like that. And I had great friends to help me do that. But I was always open to not hating, right? Because someone asked, what are the 3 most important lessons that I learned from Mama Green? 1, never hate, never judge, right? Unless you've walked in the shoes of another, and you've never walked in the shoes of another. Never let a man leave your home hungry, right? So, when it came to like race at Denison, I was open to anybody. Everyone was welcome in my home. It didn't matter if you were rich or poor, black or white, Hispanic. It mattered zero to me. You came in, we were going to party. That's it. We're all here to have a good time because that's all I knew was partying. We had house parties all the time. And the last thing I learned that was most important from Mama Green, and I think, Megan, this might actually kind of address what you're asking, and that is Mama Green always said, baby, you have $1 million personality. Never let anyone take that away from you. So when someone might punch me in the face or try to attack me or sodomize me or, shoot at me or try to stab me or threaten to stab me, one of my friends at the playground put a knife up to my neck and he said, I could stab you right now. I could end you. I said, I know you could, but you're not going to. He said, why? I said, because I'm up next. I'm on deck. What are you going to do, kill me before I go bad? He said, all right. And he puts the knife away, and I'm sitting here shaking. I'm like, what is that all about? And so I hit a line, shot up the middle, and when the game was over, beelined it home because I was like, what is this all about? So, you take a look at those things. It was all very interesting. But having that esteem, not confidence. I didn't have confidence, but I did have a lot of esteem. I always thought I was valuable because I was always told I was valuable. But being with a bunch of people that went to, Yale, Columbia, Harvard, all those Williams, all those Ivy League schools, I always felt very average. And I knew I could never rise to their level. I could never be at their level, but it made me focus on sports instead of my Buckeye hat, right? I'm not dressed like a professor. I got my Buckeye shirt on, and I always thought myself more through the sports lens, but it actually saved me too. So, this self-esteem was really the boundary because there were constant attacks on my emotional self, my psychological self, definitely my economic sense of self, and all those attacks, I was just like, whatever. I could just throw them off. Now, that had an impact long term, because my thinking about things, I have to really work through some stuff. And one of the things I have to work through is this worthiness. Because I don't feel like I'm a professor because I have anything special that's different than anybody else. What I think was, and I'll tell people, they say, doctor, and I'm like, doctor who? I don't, okay, I got a PhD, but I don't like being called doctor, and not at all. You can call me Professor because that's a cool nickname, right? You can call me Doc. That's a cool nickname because Julius Erving was Doc, and his best friend was the Professor. So I kind of, Doc being my idol, I don't mind that so much. But when you call me Doctor, it's just like race, or it's just like social class. Just by saying doctor, you automatically create this hierarchy between teachers and students, doctors, non-doctors. That's really arbitrary. The only reason I'm a doctor is simply because of the fact that I showed up to class every day. And I turned in my assignments when the assignments were due, maybe a little bit late, but for the most part, everything got turned in. If you do that enough consecutive days, from kindergarten all the way through, what would that be? 27th grade, then what's going to happen is that you're actually going to wake up as a doctor one day. No special, it's not like Superman, it's nothing special, there's nothing inherent. I mean, anyone can learn. It's tough, but it's just a matter of doing the job. So every day I show up, I get a master's degree, then I get a PhD, and I get a couple more master's degrees. It's only because I showed up, right? It's not because of some kind of ability, it's because I had that, that's what it was, is playing that ball game up against the wall and hitting those stones with a broomstick. I can sit down for 8 to 10 hours and work without drinking water, without eating. And the reason is because I knew how to do the blinders. That's how I wrote the 117 pages in the last 5 days. It was simply because of the fact that I knew how to sit down and organize my thoughts and not get up till I'm done. Oh, Megan, I appreciate that. I tend to downplay the fact that I do have empathy, because I was very lucky to have great teachers who cared. I had gang members who cared. I had family members who cared. My friends at schools, families cared. My friends from the neighborhood cared. So I was always able to have like empathy for others, because when I was attacked and sexually aggrieved, I put on a mask when my mom and Irma Jean didn't believe me when I told them what had happened. And I told my other class this, and Megan, you heard it before, but I was sexually assaulted where I had this huge red hickey that was wrapped all the way around my neck. And what happened was I had gone to my buddy's house, and there was a girl who had a little crush on me, and she came and jumped up on me, and I tripped on the sidewalk and fell down, and she was on top of me. And she was always like, her advice was magnificent. And she sees it and she said, I thought you didn't want to date anybody. I said, I only want to play for the Reds, but the girl at school. And then I go see the girl at school. She said, well, I didn't think you wanted to be with anybody. Well, there's a girl at home and the girl. So it ended up, I went home after I talked to Deanna, and Irma Jean and my mom said, what's that on your neck? They figured that she had done it. I said, no, she didn't do it. I said, your boyfriend did it. And at that point, they called me a freaking liar, and there's no way, all this stuff. Why would you say such a thing? And what I did was I went inside and I put a mask on, right? And I started wearing that mask, because when somebody devastates you in that kind of way, and the people who are supposed to protect you and love you call you a liar, you have nowhere to go. When the people who are most trustworthy to you say, no, that's a freaking lie, then who can you turn to? Nobody. So you just put on the mask and you hide. And what happened is that, and I'm really good at this in real life, obviously I can't do it here, but in real life, when I walk in I can walk in the classroom and take a look, and I can see who's hiding. I can see who's faking. I can see who's genuinely happy. I can see distress. And the reason is because when you wear that mask and you learn how, and it's what Irving Goffman calls presentation of self, when you learn how to put on a virtual mask to protect your authentic self, what you're able to do is create this wall. And a lot of you in a relationship are trying to get through somebody's wall. So it took me years to lower that wall. My first 2 wives had no chance with me. I was nice to them, and I take great care of my kids. I mean, my kids, that's a whole nother situation, right? They are treated like gold, because I was trained by Mama Green's husband, Daddy Green, who was the kindest, softest, gentlest man I ever met. He never touched me, never punished me, and yet and still I ended up being a guy's guy. And I said, if he can do that, I never have to spank a child in my life, which I never have. I've never yelled at them, never spanked them, raised my voice one time just to put things back in check. But other than that, nothing. And it's because of him as a model. But it's also because, fact be told, people say, well, didn't this affect you? Well, yeah, of course it did, right? Because I was very fearful of having children myself, because the way my grandmother had been towards my mother, if we're talking about the intergenerational cycle of violence, I wasn't violated daily. It wasn't even monthly. But when it happened, it happened. But for me, I was like, I can never do that to a child. These things, I don't want to have kids because I just don't want to be in that position. And then I had Macy, and then Madison, and I had decided that cycle wasn't going to run through my family, right? So when it came to me being a father, I was petrified because I thought that those triggers might kick in, and I have anger, but I've learned how to manage that anger back in the neighborhood because, a little kid like me, I get angry, I'm going to flip. Your dad's a motorcycle gang president, man. If I throw off on you, you're going to take me out. I don't need that kind of situation. I don't need you going home to get some gun or bring some knives up here or something, or wrap some nunchucks around my neck, all these things which have happened to me. That's the reason I bring up this example. I don't need that. So instead, I found it much easier to learn how to take the side or take the perspective of other. And when it comes to like pain, there's a couple things that I learned. These are great. I think these are great experiences to have. Is that when it comes to pain, I make the assumption that everyone has their pain. Everyone does. I mean, no one has a perfect life. No one's perfect. But if I can show you respect, and if I can show you understanding, but if even more, I can show you that in the darkest day, right, in the darkest night, the star still shines. You're not going to see any stars in the sun, right? So you have to have darkness to see the stars. And they say shoot for what? They say shoot for the stars. So what they're saying is in the dark you can shoot for the highest plateau. You can shoot for the greatest goal. And what happens is oftentimes when you come through like childhood trauma, or you've lived like a life of threat that I lived, which was is not as bad as it sounds, but it was pretty scary at times. But when you come through that, you always can tell, and this is why I have a company called Hope Works, is that when everything breaks down, if there's hope, you always have a foundation from which you can build. And the one thing I've always been very good at, I can teach you all the concepts you want, but what I'm very good at is helping people find hope again. And once they can find hope, because I tell them a couple of stories, I haven't even told you the good ones. I mean, you read the book, you'll find the good ones, right? The Blonde Beauty from Around the Way, yeah. If you're not 18 or over, don't even read that, right? You can't read it because you're not old enough to. But my ex-wife asked me to remove it. I said, I can't remove it. It happened. It's real and it's shaped who I am. And it came right off of Never Trust a Snaggletooth Bastard, which is about, the sexual assault in the house. And so when I take a look at all this, I'm like, I've seen enough. I haven't lived through everything, but I've seen enough, and I have enough of a arsenal of concepts through sociology and through criminology that I'm able to hear what you say. I'm able to come up with my theoretical understanding of it, and then I can come up with a strategy to help you get through it. I don't use those terms, and I don't use it. I don't sit here and say, this sounds like animal meat theory. I don't do anything like that. And I'll say, well, if it is animal meat theory, and if it's everyday animal meat theory instead of structural strain theory, then this is the solution versus this. Instead, I was able to listen. I can put myself in your shoes and understand things that happened to me along the way that I was able to use to change your direction. And so when I see you with the mask on, I'm able to talk to you from here, not from here. People, when I worked at Merrill Lynch, I was a great financial investment advisor. Instead of telling people how much you know, people already assume that you know. They see I have a PhD next to my name. If they read close enough, they see I have 4 master's degrees. Anyone can see these things if they look on the piece of paper. But what Joe, my partner Merrill Lynch, used to always tell me, he said, people don't want to know what you know, Shawn. People want to know that you care. And as a professor, where I got to a point is that I let my students know that I care first. And if you're really having an issue, then you know that someone cares, it gives you hope. And when you hear my story, you're like, he did it, I can do it. Right? And then it gives you that foundation. And then you find out, well, how did you do it? Well, it wasn't really hard. I went to school. I listened to my teachers. I loved Mama Green. I loved my mother. I loved Irma Jean. I got along with the people in the neighborhood. I was always consistent. And so I built this network of people who basically truly protected me. And like at the playground, the first person I ever said I was going to be a doctor wasn't someone at my school. You know, all these guys were smoking dope one day. We'd play basketball, we'd play baseball, and they'd all sit in a circle. And I'm not even talking about the book. I'll talk about that in a second. And they'd all sit in a circle and they'd pass the joint around. And they would come to me and they'd say, "Here, do you want this?" I'd be like, "No, thanks, I'm good." I said, "All right." They'd pass it around. After, some time goes by, they said, "What, you think you're better than us?" I said, "No." "Are you judging us?" I'm like, "No." And they're like, "Then why don't you hit that with us? Why don't you smoke that with us?" I said, "Wait a minute." I said, "So you're asking me if I'm judging you for using it. Are you judging me for not using it?" I said, "Is that really fair?" They're like, "Well," I said, "Are you judging me because I don't want to do it?" I said, "That seems unfair to me. I'm not judging you for doing something illegal. Don't judge me for doing something legal. I'm just here to play baseball and basketball." And these guys would be like, "This kid, who is this guy?" And one day, the same group of guys, they had circled me. And they were using a racial epithet, and they were directing it toward me. "End lover, end lover, end lover. You're nothing but an end lover." And I'm like, and this dude was one of the most influential guys in the organization. And I look at him, I said, "Man, it's funny you call me an end lover, right? Because that means I have the capability of loving." And I said, "What's interesting about all that?" So I said, "Everybody in this circle I love. I love all you guys. You're like my brothers." I said, "So if I'm an end lover and I love all you, what does that really mean then?" I'm 8 years old, right? Talking to a street gang like this. And the guy looked at me and said, "That's a good point." I said, "Thanks." And it wasn't long after, it was around that time, one of the guys, the guy who ended up going to prison, his brother was in and out of prison all the time. All his brothers went to prison. This guy, he was a great guy. I loved him. And he goes, "Man, one day you're going to be a doctor." No, it wasn't him. He said, "You're different than us. You're different than we are." I'm like, "No, man, I'm the same guy. There's something different." The Godfather, Junior, he pulls me aside. He says, "You know what, man?" He said, "One day you're going to be a doctor. You're going to be the only one coming from this neighborhood that will be a doctor." And he said, "We're going to make sure you get there." I said, "Man, I don't want to operate on anybody. I'm not trying to perform surgery." He said, "No, you're going to be a doctor because you're different." And I said, "You think so?" I said, "I don't think so, man." And he goes, "Yeah, you are." But I didn't know there was a doctor of philosophy. I thought everything was a medical doctor, right? So I become a doctor of sociology. And I saw Junior, I saw him about 3 years ago, and his brother Johnny, and a few of the other guys, Bob Dudley and a few other guys. And we all sat down, and I was talking, I gave this keynote speech at my high school, and they came to it. And I was like, I was just the same as anybody else. And we got to a restaurant the next day to watch Ohio State play. And he said, "Shawn, there's one thing that's for sure." I said, "What's that?" He said, "No, you're never the same as us. You're always different." And he said, "We always knew that you had a gift and we had to protect that gift." And I said, "You did?" He said, Yeah, we did." So, Megan, going back to it, is Mama Green protected me. This group of guys protected me. And it just so happened because I had all these people that believed in me, they held me up. And so even in the face of like a lot of turmoil, I was always surrounded by people who were so caring. That's why I always tell my students, I say, when you're building your career, you're not in college just to get your degree. You're not in college just to sit here and learn all these concepts. You're really here to do two things. One, you're here to develop your language system so that you can fit into the professional labor market. And the second thing you're here to do is build your social network. If you build your networks, and if you build your capability of, if you build your networks and your language, you're going to have cultural capital and social capital, the combination of which is going to create a great life for you. So, what I learned is there's nothing inherent in ethnic background that creates a difference in outcomes in terms of economic success, unemployment, poverty, all these kind of things. It's not inherent in the race and ethnicity. it gets played out that way in the media, and people in everyday life tend to believe that as a truth, but that's not a truth at all. What really is taking place is it is the structural dynamics of communities that either promote or do not promote upward mobility. So, if there's limited job opportunities in a community and the education system in the community doesn't lead you into positions that are elevated in terms of social mobility, then how are you going to move on? So if we take a look at a place like Liberty City, you can't bring in new companies to Liberty City because they don't have the plumbing infrastructure to build the new buildings, right? You don't know that. So what instead happens is that these persons have limited mobility because of what? Because of limited transportation. So you have limited transportation to get to these jobs. You have limited resources to get into college and get through college. There's all kinds of day-to-day challenges, especially if you have a family. So you start to take a look at the little structural circumstances that prevent groups of people from moving upward, not just in terms of structural conditions, but also in terms of cultural conditions, cultural capital, right? So even if you wanted to raise up and out, if you're regarded in one of these neighborhoods as a sellout, you're going to be bullied as badly as if you were a person from outside the community, perhaps even worse. So when they started trying to bully me, the beauty was that I did have Mama Green, and they all knew that I had the ultimate protection. See, I had one time, one guy, he kept pushing me down because I was taking him to the hole, baby. I'm cuffing, I'm double pumping on him, cuffing it, boom, finger rolling, coming behind the backboard doing my thing, and he starts pushing me down on the ground. My elbows are all cut up, my knees are all cut up, my face hit the ground, and I'm like, come on, man, what's up with that? Just because you can't stop me today doesn't mean you need to be pushing me on the ground. And I had my ball. Just give me my ball. And then they pushed me again. I said, let me tell you something, man. I'm going to come back here. I couldn't say it right. You know how you get all angry, you get all mad, you're trying to be real tough and stuff. I wanted to say, I'm going to shoot you with 6 bullets because that's how many bullets were in the gun. And instead I said, I'm going to shoot you with 6 guns. He said, oh, you got 6 guns? I said, don't worry about what I got. So he was a paper boy at Mama Green's house. So he comes over the next day, and he and this guy named Bill, they show up at her house, and washing machine's over here, and the kitchen's right here. Is actually Irma Jean, so he comes to our house, and Irma Jean goes, hey man, come on in here for a second. And I'm all cut up, and she goes, it had nothing to do with ethnicity. Had everything in the world to do with him pushing her boy down, me. He comes in, and she goes, hey man, you see that little boy over there? And this saying came from Mama Green. She goes, there's nothing in the drugstore that'll kill you faster than me over him. And his eyes start bugging out. She pulls her gun out from underneath the table. She puts it on the table. She points it right at him. And she says, let me tell you something. If he ever comes home cut up and beat up, I don't care who did it, I'm coming to find you. And when I find you, I'm going to shoot you. And she said, you better make sure he doesn't come home like this again. Okay, Miss Manor, okay, I won't do it. And so, at that point on, I never got beat up, I never got bullied because they knew, and they all knew Mama Green because they all went to Wade High School. And Mama Green was one of the cooks at the school. And so, she was legendary. So what would happen is sometimes these guys would start fighting out in the lunchroom. One day someone tried to take on her son, Leo. She ran from back behind that counter. She sees the guy beating up her son. She picks the dude up over her head, boom, throws him down on the cafeteria table. He bounces off, and she puts her forearm down his throat and says, are you going to bother my son again? And he goes, no ma'am, I won't do it. Someone else tried to fight with somebody else. She comes out there and puts him up against the wall. Ended up she was the enforcer. But everybody in that high school knew that she would put you down. So the kids in the high school knew that if they messed with me, Bertha was coming. That after they did mess with me, Irma Jean was coming. So, Megan, I had like this crazy aura of like self-protection, right? And what was really weird about the whole experience was that violence is a weird thing. Because on the one hand, you know, violence was so scary and pervasive that I always felt under threat. Me and Booney, we always felt under threat. And he went out to be a Marine, so now he knows how to give the threat back. But he's always even-headed, level-headed, even-keeled. So On the one hand, violence saved me. On the other hand, violence destroyed me. Right? So this idea of violence as being dark is really complicated because there's some light components to it. Right? For example, and Megan and Stephanie, I told the story earlier, right? The chicken and the pie crust. But one of the stories was, would my life, or questions was, would my life be different if there wasn't Mama Green in my life? And the answer is yes. It's a structural question. It's not one of opinion, because without her in my social network, right? First of all, my mother didn't have the capital accumulation to be ready to have a child. And her ability to care at that point was challenged. She was very nice. She was very funny with adults. They all got along with her. She was terrific. She was nice to everybody. She was nice to me. But when she got mad, it was me that was the target. And she got mad, especially when she'd been drinking and the bills are coming in and the stress is blowing up. So would I be the same? No, I wouldn't be the same. You wouldn't even know who I was if there wasn't Mama Green. And the reason is, one, my mom strongly considered abortion. That was her number one solution. It was pre-Roe v. Wade. So, but with her working in the hospital, she knew doctors who would take care of this, illegally, but would do it informally, versus having an adoption. So if I had been aborted, I obviously wouldn't be alive. But had I been adopted, who would I have ended up with? And then you have no way of knowing what life would have looked like at that point. It becomes an impossible hypothetical game. So let's just assume she had me on her own and didn't have any Mama Green. I was purely an accident. My father, my biological father, was a musician, and he was friends with Stevie Wonder, and he had bipolar disorder, horribly, so much so that they had to give him electroshock therapy to keep him in control. So his brain is burned out. He has no frontal lobe basically left. He was like a zombie at this point, and he committed suicide, jumped off a bridge, even though I think it was an accidental death. Based upon the newspaper reports I saw, the newspaper reports said that he had jumped off a bridge from 10 feet up and hit his head on the footer at the base after a foot chase with the police. So I figured it's an accidental death, because if you're trying to commit suicide by jumping off a bridge, why are you going to jump off from 10 feet? When the bridge, it's like the Brooklyn Street Bridge, right? So it's got these wires that go all the way up here, 160 feet, and there's a ladder that walks you all the way up there. He could have jumped up from there if he was trying to end himself. But I think that what happened is he'd been arrested so many times for alcohol violations, petty crime violations, that he just didn't want to go back to a state mental institution. So when the police were chasing him over the bridge, I think he jumped to evade capture and he hit his head. But rather than calling it an accidental death or making it look like perhaps a negligence or an involuntary manslaughter by the police or something like that, I think it was just easier to call it a suicide. And, I didn't know him well. When the announcement came on the radio that they had dragged the Maumee River, and pulled up a dead body from a couple nights before, my mom turned off my radio and said, that was your dad. And I said, it was. And I said, well, he's a nice guy, but I don't have any attachment to him. I said, that's too bad. I keep eating my eggs and my Jiffy muffins, and I got my orange juice, and turned the radio back on. I said, well, that's sad. And as it turns out, you take a look at that scenario, and it becomes really, really complicated in how to look at a worldview. Okay, so I take a look at Mama, and I take a look at the role of violence. Well, for her, what I was saying is that had my mom had me, I don't think she could have been able to manage me early on in the first 2-3 years. And I think that with her stress level, with her language system, the script that she had learned phenomenologically, that is the phenomenon in her life, from my grandmother, because I knew she would shake me, and I was okay, and she bashed me a couple times, and I went flying across the room. But I think that what would have happened is, and I asked Mama Green this, I said, hey, if you weren't in my life, would she have killed me? And she said, well, yeah, she would have killed you. And I think what would have happened was I'd have died of shaken baby syndrome. In other words, start crying, and she's always stressed out, worried about money, and she had a hard life. I could just see her shake me in my neck snapping. Not something deliberate, right? Not something because of hate, but something because of stress. So when I see, these statistics that show the 356 to 400 kids that are killed by their parents, first thing I know is, why aren't we doing something to strengthen the foundation of these single females, and sometimes fathers, but these single persons who are under this incredible duress, financial and otherwise? Why aren't we strengthening their net so that they, yes, thank you, so that, thanks Megan, so that they can actually have an outlet to deal with that stress, right? Because we're going to call you a welfare queen, or we're going to say, you know, you're siphoning off the system. Anybody who is poor wants to be poor. They can't get it. Well, what are you going to do? You have a little baby. You don't have any family. You're going to get a job. So if you leave the child behind or with somebody who's not from family, you're regarded as a poor parent. But if you take care of the child, then you're regarded as a deadbeat. Either way, you can't win. So all this stress pounding down, pounding down, pounding down, boom. She would have exploded at some point. And so when I think about being here, not being here, I don't think I'd be here. But let's say I did survive. Let's say I got through it. What next? What next? Right? I'm not going to Maumee Valley because Irma Jean had convinced my mother to send me to Maumee Valley. So next thing you know, I'm a guy who has potential with my brain. I have potential in terms of athletics. But what's going to happen? I'm hanging around with people smoking weed every day, just drinking brew. And I get in, I fit in, I get along really well. If Mama Green's not there, it's very likely that I probably would have been doing the same thing, smoking, doing cocaine, speed, whatever, ecstasy or whatever they were doing back then, and drinking all the time. And what would my life have looked like without Bertha Green? And why was Bertha Green there? And this is the moral of the whole story. Somebody said, so what is the point of the book? What's the most important point? The most important point is really complicated, but it's also simple. When that chicken flies in through the kitchen and lands on that pie crust, and Mama Green throws it out the window and it breaks its leg. And her stepfather comes home and tries to slice her throat with the knife, right? She hits him over the head with the cane bottom chair, and he goes flying to the ground, the knife goes sliding across. She jumps over him, he tries to tackle her, and when he does try to tackle her, she gets away. She goes into the bedroom, pulls out the gun. By the time he's up with his knife, she points at him, fires above his head. Poof! And he turns, oh, she's going crazy. Everyone goes running. She fires again, misses him again, and all of a sudden, bang, bang, bang. 3 shots in his back. He's rolling on the ground. Right? The store owner who gave her the gun from around the block comes and picks her up, and she escapes. He doesn't die, but he never again tries to harm her. If she doesn't shoot him, she's not alive. Which means when my mom is pregnant with me, there's no intervention. If there's no intervention, 18 to 20,000 students who I've had since I started teaching at Denison University in 1987 never meet Schwaneezy. So that's potentially 18 to 20,000 people who have an incredibly different experience with their classes than what they had with me being here. And I can't even begin to tell you how many people I've gotten into law school, graduate school, into these different types of jobs who I still run into. I still get emails from people from 1988, 1989 that were students of mine back then. And I've had, because someone in one of these questions said, do you think you've ever had an influence on another student? And do you think this book has had an influence on the lives of other people? And the answer is absolutely yes. And I can tell you unequivocally that there are 10 people, at least in the last 3 years, maybe 4, who have come to me who are suicidal, who aren't dead, they're alive, right? Why is that? Because I walked a very dark path. When your mother tries to kill you, you don't, I mean, it messes with your head a little bit. You're like, man, am I worthy? Am I not worthy? What am I supposed to do with this? And next thing you know, because I had that buffer, Bertha Green, I was like, you know what, you do have self-worth. Don't ever let her take, not even your mother, don't let her mother take your personality away. And so, has it had an influence? Yeah. And other people said, would you do it again? I would walk the exact same path. The only thing, people said, would you have changed anything? I wouldn't have changed a thing, you know, because, especially with my mom, the one thing that was really interesting is that even though Mom exploded many times, we were very close. And we were very, very similar in terms of intelligence and things like that. We could have very interesting conversations. Her problem was when she got angry and when she felt depressed, it became a dangerous situation for me. And when you threw alcohol in that, it became even more dangerous. But you set that aside. We were best friends, and she did care for me. Would I change anything? No. I wouldn't change the beatings. I kind of wish I didn't get swarmed by all those bees when I was in 3rd grade. That was one of the most painful experiences of my life. I wish I hadn't tried to dunk a basketball in 5th grade off of a balance beam and do a double backflip and land on my head and knock myself out and get a concussion. I wish I hadn't done that. However, it's fine that it did happen. I wouldn't change the people who put weapons up against me. I wouldn't change the sexual assaults. Maybe a little bit. Kind of wish they didn't happen. But the only thing, if I could change anything, maybe I wouldn't even change that. Probably the only thing that I would want differently was November 1st of 1981, the day my mother beat me to a bloody pulp. That's probably the only thing that I would change about all of it. I wouldn't change my relationship with Bertha or Daddy Green. I wish Irma Jean wasn't so Victorian and puritanical when it came to human sexuality. I mean, that was messed me up a little bit, and I've had to work through that. But I've always had the strength, Megan, in this case, to work through the things that were in my head. And like I have a sign up here, and one of the things that helps me, because when you do something wrong, how do you deal with it? Well, I do things wrong. I make bad decisions. So I have a thing up here under my Hope Works sign, which I can't show you. It says, Hope Works. Step 1, forgive yourself, which is the hardest thing to do. We're not taught to forgive ourselves. Number 2, find the mistake. Forgive yourself, find the mistake, determine to change, and then once you determine to change, commit to be in a better direction. All through my life, I've been able to do that. I will forgive myself for my transgressions. I'll understand that I made a mistake, I identify it, then I try to change it, and then I try to move into a better direction. And all those mistakes, all those things that happened to me, all those things I've done to others, I try to use those as learning experiences so that I can harness them and give them to you guys as gifts. Because when you're sitting in a classroom, you really don't understand necessarily how normal the darkness is when you do experience it. Because if you go back to that diagram, who am I, way back a couple weeks ago, we tend to think of the problem being ourselves rather than seeing it as a system problem. So as long as we blame ourselves for our own darkness, you're never going to get out of there. You can't get out. So the one thing I learned by Mama Green shooting her dad was that she lived a dark life, but she had all this light force within her. And so the one thing I've learned unequivocally, everyone who carries darkness with them is also a beacon of light for somebody who's in the same situation. So even when you give up on yourself, or you think you can't do it, or you think you won't do it, or it's impossible to do, really, it's just like getting a PhD. All you can do is take one step. That's all you can do. You can't get to the destination in a day. You got to take one step. You take enough of those steps, the accumulation is going to take you to where you want to go. Similarly, you all have a light inside of you. Even if you've done bad, or you've had bad things done to you, it doesn't mean you're not capable of change. It doesn't mean you can't build a new team. And it doesn't mean that you don't have hope that can sit in your heart. As long as you have hope, and if you don't have it, find it. Because as long as you have hope, you have something to build upon. Because we can train you how to build from hope. Once you have that, then we can help you find direction, then we can help you get a strategy and determination. We can build from there, but it's really hope. And that's from the one thing that Mama Green gave me. And my mother too, for that matter. Irma Jean, Guy. They all let me know that if you have hope and you find love, anything is possible. But you always have to believe in yourself, right? Build your team, believe in yourself, maintain hope. You do those things enough times, you're going to be great. You're going to be great. Are there, and I've had tons of questions, I mean, I haven't answered any of them yet, in terms of race and ethnicity. I don't see it. I've never been able to understand hatred and prejudgment based upon race and ethnicity, which makes me a horrible teacher for this particular class. I understand the process. I understand the historical heritage. I understand that people make assessments based upon skin color, and then they act as if somehow the skin color is real or has real meaning in and of itself. The color may be real, but the meaning behind it is not real. That's something that is created. So I can't understand how we create hate against a group of people when we don't know any of the individuals personally. And I will always live by that creed that I will not judge you based upon your exterior. I won't judge you based upon what you look like. I won't even judge you based upon what's inside of you. And the reason is because even what's inside of you is an outcome of a bunch of events that happen to you that I'll never understand. So all I can do as a person is respect you as a person and understand that you're an outcome of the same process, that I'm an outcome of the same process. In which case, we're always more similar than we are different, right? So when I see students who are trying to overcome a battle, when I see students who are in the dark who are trying to find the light, when I find those who are in the light, I ask them to shine their light upon others. Because, you know, we're not fearful of our weakness. We're fearful of the light that we have inside of us. Because when we have a light inside of us and we try to shine it on other people, we then have a moral responsibility to live up to. And that's a lot of pressure. So we shy away from shining our light because by virtue of that, then we have to take the steps and the obligation to bring others with us. Because once we shine our light on others, it gives them the opportunity to shine their light as well. And that's a lot of responsibility. So, there's always hope in a place of darkness. And whether it's race, ethnicity, social problems, whatever it is, all those things are contextualized, they're socially constructed. But we can look at it from a different perspective. And in looking at it from a different perspective, can act upon it based upon what is really important. And that is, does that person respect me? Do they show me respect? And if they do not, is there somebody I want on my team? Don't look at broad-based, arbitrary distinctions. Because we have enough hate in the world. You don't need to be a hater. Instead, what you need to do is be a lover. Love yourself, right? Because if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love someone else, and how is someone going to love you? That's really nice to have love, right? Second, if you can't love yourself, how are you going to love God? Because you're supposed to love yourself as God loves you. And if you can't love yourself, then you can't love the appreciation that God has for you, which means you can't be grateful. And then, love for other. Love of God, love of you, love of other. If you have that, then race and ethnicity are unimportant. Correct? Well, that's about all I have. So I have 1,000 questions to ask. Oh, brother, here we go. Speaking of love and love. Speaking of love, here we go. Do any of you have any questions that you want to ask me? Because I see there's still 4 of you on here, maybe 5, because Megan's boyfriend may be on here. I know it's a little delay, so go ahead and ask me. Let me see if there's anything I can answer for you. I hope you don't mind me talking about these stories so much. Any questions? Stephanie? Yolanda? Megan? By the way, Megan, thank you for your participation on this. Are there any questions that I can answer? Don't you wish this was a live class where we could really get down to it? That's what I do. That's what I always do. I appreciate that, Megan. It's been my gift. If I can say I have a gift as a professional, my gift is the ability to use storytelling, to provide the concepts that you need to learn from a class. Right? I've always been really good about that. I've been lucky that way, right? That I can take these stories, go all the way over here and over here and over here, but turn around and be able to, boom, make it important. I hope it was worthwhile. Any other questions? Oh, geez. Yolanda, when did you sneak that one in there, huh? Yes. Right? I mean, it's kind of like what I just saw a friend of mine post yesterday. Being a father doesn't have to be, it's not about being blood, right? Being a father is about being a father, about being there for kids and raising the kids up and treating with respect. Because a lot of biological fathers aren't present in anyone's lives, right? So yes, it's a remarkable. I wouldn't do it again. I mean, I wouldn't do anything differently, because I have the richest background I could ever ask for. I have so much wealth based upon all these things that have happened that I really hope that I joined the Les Brown, who's a motivational speaker, he's giving a 7-week class. So I'm going to take the 7-week class, and the top 3 people, top 3 students in the class, get to speak with him on stage. So I'm going to dig in. I got 7 free weeks after the semester ends where I can dig in and be the best. Let me tell you what, I'm going for it. Because I do think that these stories do have the ability to impact others. And then we find out, Yolanda, that, whereas on the surface you're female, I'm a male, and I don't know if you're Hispanic or not, but I know with us being in Miami, there's a possibility of it. And with me being a white male, there's inherent differences. Even if you're from Miami, I'm from the north or south, all those dynamics, at the end of the day, there's still commonalities that bind us together. Like C. Wright Mills says, the sociological imagination, our ability to see others from the point of view of them is far more important than seeing others from our own point of view. And our own social problems, our own social ills, are actually social problems that are experienced by others similarly. So if we understand that other people experience problems similarly, then we can always be empathetic and step outside of ourselves. Oh, really? Okay. I hope I wasn't trying to insult you or anything like that. My neighborhood was Puerto Rican. Junior and Johnny that I was talking about, they were Puerto Rican descent too. I bet that's amazing, right? That you don't know your father, and I didn't know mine very well. I only met him a few times, and he was more legendary than anything else. But at least I hope it's a good thing that you know your mother and that you see your biological siblings. When you see them, do you see them often, or is it just one of those things where you have because I have 7 half-brothers and half-sisters who, 4 of them I met once, and I spoke to them all on the phone one time, and I met 4 of them one time, and then I met 1 of them twice, and that's it. So I don't know how to define that. Do you see them? No, okay, all right. Do you ever see your siblings or what have you, or your mom? Thank you. All right. Megan, Stephanie, any questions? Well, with that, everybody, I will take this time to tell you good night. Expect some advertisements, some announcements coming up. I appreciate you tuning in. We only had 4 of our 9 classmates today. So it's not a real tight connection then with you and your siblings. Then I take it. Well, that's all right. I don't know you personally, and you're just a little circle on my screen. But you all, like I've said before, you all are welcome to contact me through text. And now that major paper's done, I can actually spend some time getting to know people. Anyhow, you know what? You're all great tonight, and I appreciate you participating and spending some time with me this evening. I'm getting more comfortable with the live stream, I think you can tell, and I hope it's all been worthwhile. I'm going to sign off. This is Shawn Schwaner. They call me Schwaneezy, the Hope Warrior. Talk to you later. Have a great day.